the NASCAR Cup Series rolls right into Phoenix Raceway this weekend for the real first challenge for these drivers this season. Of course, Daytona and Atlanta take some skill in the draft, and then COTA's a road course, which really ensures that some of the best drivers bubble to the top, but of course there are some road course ringers that aren't going to be competing on these intermediate style tracks that make up a majority of the schedule. So Phoenix, kind of the first real oval track we're going to get to this season, and we'll see a lot of the people who are contenders today or tomorrow, whenever this video comes out, at Phoenix will probably be sticking around, probably in contention to win a championship when we return to Phoenix in November. So taking a look at Phoenix Raceway, of course it's 1 mile long. It's an intermediate. Something to keep in mind this week is that the NASCAR is allowing Goodyear to bring the option tire back that was used at Richmond last year, which I think resulted in pretty good racing and passing, and the prime tire, as they're calling it, is also going to be much softer. So I think that's going to spice some things up for a track that really could use some help passing. But as we're saying that, we're going to move right on back, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the contenders. And of course, we're going to start it off with the betting favorite to win this race, and to win his 3rd race in a row, Christopher Bell, just having an excellent start to the season here. Wins at Atlanta and at COTA. So let's see if he can check off another track type in just the first month here of the season. Christopher Bell, he's a favorite for a reason. He's really good, and obviously he just has one of the best cars in the garage when he's racing for Joe Gibbs Racing, and top 3 talent in terms of just pure driving pace in the field. He's going to be in contention for this win. This is one of his better tracks, especially when we like to compare the 3 tracks that you can kind of compare to each other. They're all in this like 1 mile, somewhat flat type racetracks. You look at New Hampshire, which is the house that Christopher Bell owns, and then you look at Gateway, which has been the stomping ground of Team Penske for the most part. So it's no brainer that Bell, who typically owns New Hampshire, is the betting favorite. And then in second place, the other guy that Vegas thinks is going to be in contention for the race win this weekend is Ryan Blaney. Statistically, his best track in 6 races in the next-gen era here at Phoenix. Ryan Blaney has an average finish of 2.8 in 6 races. And the thing that makes that even more improbable is that he has 6 top 5s with 0 wins. So he's averaging a 2.8 finish without a single win to kind of buoy his efforts here. And of all the full-time drivers who have raced every year since the next-gen car came out, William Byron is in second with an average finish of 8.3 and only 3 top 5s in that 6-race span. So Ryan Blaney statistically has been by far the best racer at this track. Kind of a quiet start to the season for Blaney. Obviously, this is where he won his championship in 2023. But outside of a pole at Atlanta, he has not really led very many laps. He didn't lead very many laps even at Atlanta. And this has just kind of been a quiet year. But at Circuit of the Americas, he earned some stage points, even on a day where Team Penske did not bring very fast race cars. He earned a lot of stage points at Atlanta and Daytona, and he managed to finish in the top 10 both at Atlanta and Daytona when he was wrecked out with about 15 to go in both races. So Blaney's had a very kind of under the radar season, but he's been towards the front of the pack most of the races so far this year. And this is statistically his best race. The one thing to keep in mind is that the fall race has been dominated by Penske in the next gen era, with obviously Logano and Blaney winning the last 3 championships here at Phoenix. But the spring race has been typically dominated by either the Toyotas or the Hendricks, with a win for the Stewart-Haas Racing at the time driver Chase Briscoe thrown in there for good measure. So while Blaney, this is his most dominant track, he's been good here every race, and he's finished in the top 5 every single race in the next gen era here at Phoenix. He may not have winning speed, but he's most likely going to have consistent top 5 speed here at Phoenix. Moving right along now to Kyle Larson. Some say he's the best driver in the world, just pound for pound. But he has not really shown it so far this year. Of course, he had a second place finish at Atlanta, which is very un-Kyle Larson-like. He's been just terrible on these super speedways. So while you don't expect him to contend on a super speedway, he finished second. And then he had a terrible week last week at Circuit of the Americas. Just about 2 laps from hell for Kyle Larson, between some contact, a bad pit stop, and then immediately loses a tire that has gotten his car chief, and 2 of his crew members ejected for this next week, and ahead to Phoenix. Kyle obviously can drive just about anything, but he's not really been the guy here at Phoenix. Kyle Larson averages an average finish of 11.3, which is good for 6th in the NASCAR Cup Series here at Phoenix in the 6 races in the next gen era. 3 top 5s, 5 top 20s. He's led 216 laps, which is 3rd most in the series here at Phoenix. So I expect he could win a stage, but when it comes to actually having winning speed, that may be something that's a little bit off here for Larson. But betting odds aren't necessarily going to tell you the whole story when it comes to Larson, because he's always going to be in the top 5 every week. He's just a name that everyone outside of racing knows, and he's, like I mentioned before, one of the best drivers in the world. So any given week, Kyle Larson could go out and contend for a win. And there's nothing stopping him from doing that this weekend at Phoenix. His teammate William Byron, the Daytona 500 winner, coming off a 2nd place finish at Circuit of the Americas, giving Christopher Bell all he could handle on those last 2 to 3 laps, but could not get by the 20 machine. Byron, much like Larson, is going to contend on every single week. William Byron is going to be in a spot to win. His car will be fast more times than not. And if we take a look at the average finishes for everyone who's won 6 races here, like I mentioned before, William Byron has an average finish of 8.3, which is good for 2nd. The problem is, like I mentioned before, Ryan Blaney's average finish here is 2.8. So there's a large margin between the 1st place driver and the 2nd place driver when it comes to Phoenix. While Blaney was Mr. Consistent, no wins, but 6 top 5s, William Byron is buoyed by 1 win, but he only has 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s. So while Blaney is going to finish in the top 5 pretty much like clockwork, the same can't be said for Byron. But if Byron has top 5 speed, he's more than likely going to win this race. And I think that's really how the story of William Byron's career thus far. Obviously, the Hendrick Chevys, they show up relatively fast to every single racetrack. Phoenix has not been one of their fastest tracks in the last 2 seasons, but we'll see if they have made any adjustments after last year, where both of these races were dominated by Gibbs and the Penske cars. Speaking of Team Penske, the defending champion and the defending winner of this race, or at least the fall finale at Phoenix last season, Joey Logano, he has just an insane record here. So, 7th best average finish at Phoenix in this era, 12.2 average finish, while his teammate has the 6 races where he has 6 top 5s and 0 wins. Joey Logano has 2 top 5s at Phoenix in the 6 races, but those 2 top 5s are both wins, and they both came in the races where he had to clinch a championship. So, Logano is one of the most clutch drivers in the history of NASCAR at this point. I don't think that can be contested. As much as it's easy to hate on Logano for how he won his championships, he definitely wins when it matters most. And I just don't see Logano having necessarily winning speed here this weekend. I think if any of the Penskes are going to be owned, it's going to be Ryan Blaney. But Joey Logano, multi-time winner at this track in this era, so of course he's going to be near the top of the leaderboard when it comes to gambling odds. We're going to breeze right through Chase Elliott. Same thing as many of his Hendrick teammates. Average finish here at Phoenix of 12.3, which is good for 8th in the Cup Series. He'll be fast. Whether or not he has winning speed, it seems like only 1 or 2 of the Hendrick cars are going to have winning speed each week, and we'll see if any of them can capitalize this week. So, same thing I said about Byron for Elliott. Much in the same category, Denny Hamlin really dominated part of this race last year before Christopher Bell took the lead from him and won this race. Denny Hamlin, very good in this era at Phoenix. Average finish of 12.3, just the same as Chase Briscoe. Chase Elliott has a 16.4 average finish here. I confused the 2 Chases, and he's only run 5 races here at Phoenix. But Hamlin and Elliott kind of in the same category for me, as is his Toyota teammate slash driver, or Reddick's owner Hamlin, kind of in the same category as him this week, is going to be fast, is going to have a fast race car, is going to have the talent to run up front, but is he going to have winning speed? That's a whole different issue. I think that Tyler Reddick is one of the top 3 most talented drivers in the Cup Series. This is a race track that really values talent. When it comes down to average finish, Tyler Reddick is 5th over these last 6 races with an average finish of 11.2. But no wins over that period of time, 2 top 5s. Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, I expect them to all run around the same position this week, but I think Reddick and Hamlin, if they're there at the end, I think they're going to lead a lot of laps. Whether or not they can actually win this race is going to come down to strategy and just being there at the end. Some dark horses to watch out for. All of Spire Motorsports. So, qualifying has already happened when I recorded this video on Saturday night. And Carson Hocevar qualified 3rd, Michael McDowell 7th, and Justin Haley in 8th. It's the best qualifying effort for Spire Motorsports on a non-drafting track ever. So, it's not necessarily going to translate to race trim. So, obviously these cars are fast in qualifying, but it's going to be 500 miles. The track is going to change a lot, so Spire's going to have to change. So while these cars might be very fast at the beginning of the race, it may not mean that they're going to be fast towards the end. But with a veteran crew chief like Rodney Childers paired up or at Spire. I think that they're making a lot of adjustments really quickly, and you've seen that so far this season, especially with Carson Hocevar at these last two races at both Coda and Atlanta. So look out for any of the Spire Motorsports. Obviously, Hocevar and McDowell are the big names, but Justin Haley, like I said, 8th place in qualifying. He's got the speed. Whether or not they can keep up with the track is going to be a whole different thing. And I think saving the tires is going to maybe not fall in Justin Haley's favor, but might favor for someone like Michael McDowell, who has had a sneaky good run to start this season. Another dark horse that qualified really well for the second time this year is Josh Berry in the Wood Brothers 21. I think the Wood Brothers have really enhanced their Josh Berry's skill, and I think Josh Berry has driven the Wood Brothers equipment much better than Harrison Burton, which I think the bar was very low, but so far, early on in this relationship, it seems to be working out for both sides. I think having the access to Penske data that Wood Brothers has really helped, and as you can see on the tracks where Penske does typically does pretty well, it's translating, and Josh Berry is running right there with his pseudo teammates of Cindric, Blaney, and Logano. Berry, obviously from a short track background, raced modifieds all the time, and I think he's going to surprise some people this weekend. Like I mentioned, you can kind of look at New Hampshire as somewhat of a sister track to Phoenix. There's some differences between Gateway and New Hampshire and Phoenix, but you can kind of take a look at them. And after only one race here, so that does tend to muddy the water a little bit, Josh Berry is the best driver at New Hampshire. And he's going to be in much better equipment this year. So it's obviously not New Hampshire, Phoenix, but we can compare the two tracks at the very least. And maybe Josh Berry will have some speed that we're not necessarily used to the 21 having this weekend. He's not my pick to win or anything, and he's just a dark horse, just like how the 3 Spire guys are. But after qualifying and after just some thought on this, Josh Berry is my official dark horse pick for the weekend. And now that gets me to the actual pick for the win this weekend. So everyone's expecting me to pick Bell. And Christopher Bell is my 36 for 36 if you play at home in fantasy this weekend. But I'm going to go with his Joe Gibbs Racing teammate. I intentionally left him out of the favorites just so I could talk about him at length here. And that's Chase Briscoe. He won this race in 2022 with Stewart-Haas equipment, and as I mentioned before, Stewart-Haas equipment not nearly as good as the Wood Brothers equipment this year, as we've seen with Josh Berry that we just got done talking about, but definitely not as good as that number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing machine that Briscoe is able to pilot around. He and James Small have so much momentum this week after winning their appeal against NASCAR for that L1 penalty that they received at Daytona for the spoiler just not being the right size or being adjusted. Winning that appeal is just automatically is 100 points in their pocket. Now take that onto a track where Joe Gibbs has been really good at in this particular race in the spring, and I think Chase Briscoe might win this thing. But I mean, momentum is real, and sometimes you tend to overvalue it in sports, but something about this weekend, I feel Chase Briscoe is going to come away from this I think he's just going to come away from it with a win in his pocket, and it's going to be the best week of his career up to this point, just gaining 100 points back from winning the appeal and then going to victory lane in the desert for the second time in his career. So Chase Briscoe is my official pick here for the Shriners 500 at Phoenix Raceway. I will go ahead and give you my NASCAR fantasy picks for this weekend as well. So Chase Briscoe, since I have him winning, he's obviously going to be in my starting five, along with Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, and Tyler Reddick. Hamlin and Reddick mostly for the stage wins, but I think that this is going to be decided between Bell, Blaney, and Briscoe, the three Bs. And then in my garage, I have Carson Hocevar, someone who has just consistently shown more speed than I think anyone has given him credit for to start this season. So, Bell, Blaney, Briscoe, Hamlin, Reddick, and Hocevar are my 6 drivers for fantasy this weekend. And Christopher Bell is my 36 for 36 driver, just to go ahead and capitalize on the momentum he has had this week leading up to it. So tell me in the comments below if I missed anybody, if I missed talking about your favorite driver this weekend. Tell me who you have winning in the desert at Phoenix Raceway. And yeah, just leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I try to talk about NASCAR at least once or twice a week, along with Braves baseball, as you can see from the bobbleheads on my desk. And we'll have some football content now coming up with free agency about to begin in the NFL this week. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.